most people, they make it a life plan to be an actor. I wanted to be a cameraman and a photographer, so that's the track I took. And when I came to LA, it's a tough nut to crack. So I got a job driving for a man named Roger Corman, who did a lot of B movies back in the day, and so I was mainly interested in learning lighting, camera, sound, and one day, one of the actors didn't show up on set, and we were the same size. So Roger told me to learn his lines at lunchtime, and they started shooting me at 1 o'clock into late into the night. So that's how I became an actor. Oh, that's my wife. That's Lisa.
Nice to meet you.
I'm like crawling around him.
Hello.
So anyway, so I joined an acting, a playhouse to start doing some stage work to figure out if I'm going to work on both sides of the camera, which it appeared I was. I better start doing some plays. So I started refining the craft of acting, and I combined that with the knowledge of how the camera works. So it seemed like it helped me out a lot as I went along, as far as my film acting skills.
So what was the gig? What was the first movie that you played in?
Oh, it was a real epic called Night Called Nurses.
I've seen that.
Yeah, 3 guys, 3 girls, and some action.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was further along. I started to do some television, and I had a little background in martial arts. One of my best friends of the last 50 years, he's one of Bruce Lee's first original students, and so we used to work out. And anyway, that came up in one of my meetings, and the next thing I got offered to do a kung fu, but not for me to do anything. I just wound up being David Carradine's punching bag. The funny thing is he showed up at my dressing room. There was another actor, if you know him, Gary Busey. And Gary and I were sharing a very tiny dressing room. And David shows up at 7 o'clock in the morning with a bottle of grape juice and says we all should take a drink to celebrate the start of the show. And I just sort of, I don't like grape juice, so I just kind of faked it. And then Gary took a big swig and David took a big swig, and we all said, okay, let's have a good show. What I found out later was the grape juice was laced with LSD. So I was happy that I didn't take a big swig of it. I got a little buzz, just from whiffing it, but I could still do my job. So that's how that started. Later on, when we did the fight sequence, he was totally out of control. And when he kicked me, he cracked a couple of my ribs. It was for real, And I know the rest of the time, we were working with Chief Dan George on that episode called The Ancient Warrior. And in some of the scenes, I had to pick up that old Indian and carry him around on my shoulder. And this guy must have weighed 1,000 pounds, And with 2 cracked ribs, I was feeling very uncomfortable, to say the least. But we got through it. It was, I guess, just one of those stories on the road,
Oh, then fantastic story to share.
It's it's a great feeling to be able to get paid for doing something that you like to do. And but I never did. I never did trust it too much, so I always kept my photography cameraman business going along. And one of the things that it helped me not, I didn't have to take every job that came along because I needed the money, because I could make money behind the camera. And it helped me not do a lot of crap, if you know what I mean. I mean, I've done my share of crap, but you know, I would have done a lot more had I not been able to make a living working behind the camera. And so I feel grateful for that. But to answer your question, once once I did the Roger Corman film, The Final Mission, which was widely seen, and it was also my real lead in a feature film. I started working pretty much nonstop after that. So it was quite a wonderful thing to be able to offer. You know, the funny thing is, my my good friend Stuart Raffel, who directed Ice Pirates, he and I had tried to option the book First Blood back in 1980, and Stallone was in on the bidding, and he obviously, the rest is history. He won out on the book. So then, ironically, we did kind of a low budget version of that when we did Final Mission. That character was a similar kind of character, but it's funny how all of these things tied together. But after Final Mission came out, my career took a big jump up. There was all kinds of interesting offers coming in. Roger, you know, the guy was a genius. He was a cheap son of a bitch too.
Mhm.
You know, he didn't want to pay anybody anything, but he gave everybody an opportunity to work, and so it was more like a kind of like a guerrilla filmmaking. You know, we'd all jump in a van and go out and learn the lines, jump out of the van, say the lines. We would never pay for a location, you know, always steal the locations. You know, we shot these movies for about 12 nickels. And anyway, but we stayed within a certain budget. He tried to, he put together the best people he could who were willing to work cheap. And he never lost money, ever lost money. And after a while, he gained a lot of respect in the business around town. One of the few producers that's never lost money on a film project. So I owe a lot to him, as do a lot of other big name people, I would say now. Yeah. I don't remember too much about that show. It was the cars were the thing. David Hasselhoff was a terrific guy. Treated everybody really well, and very funny guy too. You know, he's you know, very good on the set with everybody. And coincidentally, the other actor playing my partner on that, he was real good with the bullwhip, and so he started teaching me whip tricks way back then that I tried to bring to Steven later on, but they had that whole gig. That's a whole other story. But anyway, it was funny that he was a good whip guy. That's what we used to do between takes is work on whip tricks.
It's like fate, huh? It's
Yeah.
like fate.
You know, we had a blast doing that. Again, it was we did it on a shoestring budget. It was pretty ambitious project for the amount of money we had to spend on it. I remember the guys that were dressed up as these great big robots. Those outfits were just made out of thick foam, and these guys. We were shooting in, you know, very warm weather, so the robots were fainting right and left. You'd see a robot keel over. And if any of those got in the shot, that was for real. The inside of the great big spacecraft that we were in was actually shot down here at, it's a great big sanitation station, like a sewage plant, with all of these pipes and towers and barrels and all the stuff. You know, they dressed it up, but we were actually shooting inside of a great big sewage dump. That was the spaceship. But illusions, right?
Absolutely.
Good, great cast. Angelica was great. Bob and I, we had belonged to the same theater group, the Beverly Hills Playhouse, and so we knew each other from there. Back in those days, he didn't even have a car. I used to give him a ride home. So, you know, good for him. He met with such great success, and then unfortunately, we lost him too soon too. But he was a good man. And then John Matuzak, you know, we lost him too, but he was a great guy. We had a lot of laughs. I still have some of the pictures I shot of Ron Perlman. I said, you know, you don't have to do anything else, Ron, except show up with that face of yours. You're always going to work. So he was good to work with. Yeah, we had fun. You know, Tom again, he was part of that same Beverly Hills Playhouse that Bob Urich and I were part of. And so, yeah, we all knew each other from there. And yeah, Tom used to sleep on my couch when he was going through his divorce. So, you know, these guys were in bad shape, I'm telling you, back then. But I got a call from Tom when they were shooting the pilot for Magnum PI. He wanted me to be his the helicopter pilot in the series. It was written for, you know, a guy that looked like me with long blonde hair, one of his buddies from Vietnam. And so it looked like we were going to do that. And then about that time, NBC decided they would be a good idea to this affirmative challenge was affirmative action was coming in. So they decided to replace me with a black actor at the last minute, and which worked out okay for the show. I wasn't too happy about it, but I got my I guess I got my revenge later on when I wound up in Indiana Jones. But in any event, we stayed friends, and he was happy to see me. The funny thing about this film, Innocent Man, they sent me the script. I was a fan of Peter Yates, the director, and they sent me the script, and I worked real hard on it. all weekend long, and I had a meeting on Monday. So I went in there, all the room full of people, and said hello, hello. And then they said, well, thank you very much for coming in. I said, what are you talking about? You're not going to read me after all the work I put in? They said, no, we don't feel you're mean enough for the part. And so I said, well, I walked over to the door of the office and I said, none of you assholes are going to get out of this room to go eat your lunch until you read me. How's that? And I meant it. And so they all settled back and I read for the part, and they offered me the part before I got off the studio lot. Yeah, and I was pissed. You know, you put all that work in, they say, well, thanks for coming in. You know, I don't know. I'll refrain from using swear words, but I was really pissed off, and they knew it. And that I brought that level at that moment, I think I scared them all in the room. And they said, well, if he can do that to us now, he can do that on the set. So that's how I got that part, actually.
Wow, amazing. And also with David Rashi,
Yeah, cool, yeah.
he had the show Sledgehammer, and that was absolutely, it still is. They show it here now and then with the reruns.
David's a funny guy. I mean, he cracked me up. We cracked each other up constantly on that thing. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Well, he was crazy, but we got along. Yeah. I don't think either one of us remember too much about the movie, but we became friends later on. And now I saw him. I saw him just before the pandemic started, and he was great. You know, he was just really clean, clear, good shape, happy. Well, who wouldn't be with $100 million? And there was a show called Amazing Stories back in 85, 86, something like that. I did one of the first episodes playing Davy Crockett at the Alamo. And so he liked what I did in that. That was when we first met. And so he wanted to talk to me after he saw the show. And so we had a meeting, and I told him about that I like to, I'd come back from Guatemala and looking for some artifacts, and some legal, some illegal. I was looking for something special, and so I got a hold of a bull, a monkey bull, and turns out that it was illegal, and so I had to get out of the country fast with. I rented a little Subaru and I drove through the jungle, across the border from Salvador into Guatemala, and drove all the way to Guatemala City, and then flew out of there. And I was going to sell this monkey bowl to a Beverly Hills art collector, but I went through such a hassle getting this bowl and then getting away from the guys that were trying to shoot me or lock me up, that I just kept the bowl. You know, it meant too much to me. So I told him that story, and he laughed, and he said, well, how do you feel about jumping from a moving truck to a train? And I said, I don't mind at all, as long as somebody else does it. And we laughed, and that's all that was said. But when I was walking out the door, he had his secretary cancel all the rest of his meetings that day. I expect that he had in his mind that he'd found the guy, and that was me. The weird thing about it is everybody in town was after that part. They wanted to be in that movie. They wanted to be part of that Indiana Jones thing, and pretty big names. But I guess he was looking for maybe somebody who wasn't that well known and had a little bit of, it would be a bit of a surprise for the audience. I'm not sure, but I got the phone call about a week later saying, would you be willing to play the part? And I said, I'll get back to you, Steve. Just kidding. Of course, I had seen the other two, and I became a big fan like everybody else. What I didn't want to do was I didn't want to copy or mimic Harrison in any way. I wanted to make this character different. So I thought of him more as a mercenary, treasure hunter, like you'd hire. In fact, I came up with an origin story in my head for this guy that he grew up the hard way. His father was a gold miner and an unsuccessful one, but he decided rather than to work in the mines, he would treasure hunt of gold and artifacts that were already above ground. He thought he could do better like that, and it'd be a lot more fun. So it was like there was an old show called Have Gun Will Travel, and in my mind, it was like I treasure hunt and will travel for a fee, but I always deliver. And that's how I wanted to portray him. And then when I got on set and you see what the chemistry is, then you see magical things happen. You just sort of let things happen and you deal with them in an honest way. But I didn't want to have any predetermined ideas. I did bring the whip with me, and Stephen rejected that right away because they had this whole other thing worked out, as you know, where the whip was in the lion car. But I didn't know that was in the part of the script that they gave me. So I had the whip with me just in case they had me teaching him the whip. For a young actor, he was very skilled and, very much open to, what was ever going on. The funny thing about, you never know how you're going to get on with another actor when you just walk on the set and you start rehearsing. But we had good chemistry right off the bat. And, I was just very thrilled to be working with such a talented young guy. And I knew that whatever scenes we were doing together, there'd be, they'd be a little extra special. And in fact, I asked Stephen, I said, look, in that scene, which turned out to be a hugely important scene when I give him my hat. I asked him, I said, Stephen, what do you want to really see in this moment? And he looked at me and he says, Richard, I just want to see magic. And I said, well, that's kind of like putting lightning into a bottle, but so that's what I kind of took a deep breath and just went with it. But whatever we did there, we did it on the first take, and that was it. And I knew that I knew we had it. I felt it in my gut. To add more pressure, the sun was starting to go, and they said, we don't have much time to do this shot, so don't mess it up, you know, no pressure, right? So we just had to time it. Now that the guy who was doing the camera work, he had a Steadicam rig on, you know, big harness, small Panaflex camera, but it was big. So, and there was not a lot of room because of the way the caboose was rigged out with all the props and everything. So the trick is to have the box collapse, run past the cameraman without hitting the camera, which I came within about a half inch of doing, and which would have ruined the shot. And then we were losing the light, and I had probably gotten yelled at. So I just, you know, held my breath and tried to do it the best I could. Meanwhile, you know, Stevie Lambert, who was doubling River, he was hanging off the side of that train down there at the end of the caboose, you know, and so he was waiting there, barely hanging on, and waiting for that door to fly open. So, and that door did get stuck, and so I thought, God damn, I'm not going to be able to get this door open. So I really hit it hard, and then it flew open, thank God. And went out there, and then so Stevie was able to jump off the train onto the tracks and make the whole thing work seamlessly. But quite frankly, it was a miracle that the whole thing worked in one take. We didn't have to do it a second time. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's movie magic, and thank you for giving me an answer after so many years. And yeah, that was also, I remember. Yeah, you pulled the door and didn't open. You had to put it again, and then it opened. Yeah.
Well, I got my jacket, and of course, and then the Herbert Johnson hat that I was wearing. Actually, I wore two different hats. One was Herbert Johnson, and one was a local made hat. O'Farrell was the hat maker's name. But in any event, so Stephen gave me the hat and the jacket. I didn't see it, but I heard George went into my room and took my hat. But he didn't realize that I had used the other hat in one of the other scenes, the Farrell hat, and so, which is the hat that I have here in the background. And so I did manage to salvage one of the hats. But that's pretty much it. That I figured the hat and the jacket, that's enough. You know, I think it was one of those unconscious things that creep into your work. You know, as as the character inhabits you, you start doing very subtle things. Your voice slightly changes one way or another. The cadence of your voice changes. But no, that wasn't intentional. That was just kind of, that grew out of the character that I created.
That a lot of fans think that the hat that Fedora passes to Young Indy, it's just a hat, not the hat. Could you give your opinion and maybe untie the situation? Is it the hat that Indiana Jones wears in every movie, or is it just a hat and then some other story happened?
It's just a hat. We landed. It was September, and it was still warm, but not it wasn't terrible. I know that Harrison was up on the set to help River, and also he wanted to check me out to see if I would properly represent his predecessor, and so he was standing. It's a funny thing about that. It was a warm day. I had the jacket and the hat on, and he was standing next to me with shorts and a t-shirt on, and we were just BSing, talking about carpentry. We both have an interest in that, and so a tourist train pulls up, and they're all taking pictures, and they're all yelling at him to get out of the way. They want to get a shot of Indiana Jones, So he had a good laugh about that, about perceptions. Yeah. But to answer your question, no, the weather was cooperated, very pleasant. The jacket. This jacket is a very very thin leather, and very comfortable to wear. It doesn't have a big lining in it or anything, so I was never uncomfortable. I think most of the time I was trying to keep up with the Joneses. I didn't have time to be hot or cold. I knew it was a good relationship between River and myself. I had no idea it would have such a longevity that it did, and that it's the relationship between my character and Young Indy, River, touched so many people across the world that I'm getting these just many letters all the time from people, young men who've grown up, women who've grown up, and how it positively affected their lives. And it's an interesting. I didn't realize the importance of that character to the fabric of the whole show, of the history of who he is, where he comes from, and why he is the way he is. And the truth of the matter is that Young Indy didn't like me very much at the time, but he grew up to be me, and that's the irony of the whole thing. I had a big effect on him during a time when he was being formed. His character was being formed. Now, there was some talk of there was talk before River died about doing a complete separate movie just with River and myself, showing how I mentored him. In fact, you guys know the story. Originally my character was supposed to be Abner Ravenwood, and they decided to not define my character. They wanted to keep him more or less a man with no name, so that they could take him any different direction later on, or no direction, just depending on what George Lucas felt like he wanted to do. Disney had talked to me about doing an origin story about this character. This was just when the pandemic hit, and so that got put on the back burner, and then they started production on Indy 5, and so They got very quiet about that. I don't know whether it's a dead issue at this point, but they liked the idea that I hadn't gone out and exploited the character with doing a lot of knockoff shows with a similar kind of character. And I had the opportunity to do that. But I've always felt that it was important to keep the integrity of this character intact. He's such an important piece to this bigger puzzle that they like the idea that I just haven't been overexposed in a lot of different other projects. I made a conscious decision to take a step back from doing projects I didn't feel very good about. If I was going to do another project, it had to come up to a certain standard that I think I had achieved in doing the role of Fedora, and that hadn't happened. So I developed this origin story on my own of Fedora, and I have it ready to go to work with Disney on if they want to meet me halfway with the thing, and we'll see what happens. If nothing happens, that's okay. If I never do another part, I would like to do another part, but it has to be a quality part in a quality film that hopefully will touch people, as Fedora did. But I feel a responsibility, like to all the fans, to not do anything to take away from the mystique of Fedora's character. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm his custodian right now.
Yes, we're ready to watch on Disney Plus the Book of Fedora.
They used every bit of footage. I think they did not plan on that sequence would become so popular, and because that's one of the biggest complaints on the film is they wanted that sequence to be longer. Oh, we had a lot of fun. I worked with another actor named Fred Dreyer, who was an ex-football player. I was a fan of his for the LA Rams, and the funny thing is, I went on the set, and I never saw a guy mess with his hair so much as Ted Danson. They were working on him for hours to get this thing, and then it came out perfect. And I said, "How do you do that, man?" It's like because it looked like he had no hair in the morning, and then he comes out with this big. Well, movie magic, I guess. The other guys, Norm, the heavy guy, and Cliff, the mailman, we laughed constantly when we were on the set. I enjoyed it very much.
And actually, you mentioned Fred Dreyer, and you also work in Hunter.
Yeah.
So was that related to working on Cheers together?
We became friends, so he asked me to do an episode of his show. So I'm working on a book. I've been making photographs for many years and writing my thoughts, where I was and what I was doing, and it's called Stories from the Road, and so I'm working on this one and working on the origin story. And I do have, I started out before I even got into camera work. I started out as a painter, so I'm working on my painting. I do a lot of. I want to put on a show sometime next year. So got a lot of paintings in storage, and I'm working on a new one. I have a house on an island up in the Northwest that I spend my summers, where I go up there to write and paint. And quite honestly, you know, we didn't get into it too much, but I didn't like the offers I was getting after Indiana Jones came out. Well, I got a 3-picture offer shooting in Europe, and I went over there and I squandered a couple of years over there working on these movies that turned out to be not very good, and nobody saw them, which I'm now happy about. But after that period, this brought us into the early 90s, and I went back to working as a cameraman, and I found myself in Bosnia during the war in 95, working on a documentary, and that experience sort of moved me in a different direction away from being a Hollywood actor, and my interests changed dramatically. And now that's what is going on in Ukraine. It brings back those memories. I saw a lot of atrocities that I couldn't imagine were still going on in this 2022 that we're living in, and it seems like we've gone back to World War II. So, not to get too heavy about it, as I have gotten older, I feel very good about all the work I've done, and I'm very happy to have Indiana Jones as the movie that everyone remembers me from. If that's my legacy, I welcome it with open arms. I would like to do one more project of that caliber with that character, and so if that's possible. If not, I'll spend my time writing and painting and looking at the ocean. How bad could it be?
That's quality life, my friend. That's quality life. And for sure, we're going to start sending letters like maniacs. I'm going to post this in every single Indiana Jones group. We need to start sending letters so Disney wakes up and makes a Fedora story.
Tell Disney to get out their asses and get that project going.
That one
es lo que te iba a decir. Es lo que te iba
would
a
have
decir.
been the perfect closing for the magnificent interview that you gave us. But I have to know about the painting behind you. You need to tell us something about the painting. And Sergio, ponémelo en pantalla si puedes.
Yes.
Well, this, my wife, who you briefly met, she painted this from a photograph that was taken of me and my stunt double on location. And we were just goofing around. That we like, the Wrigley gum twins there. So that's the picture was taken. I thought it was kind of a funny, it would make a good image for a painting. So that's what she did.
Totalmente.
Okay, Richard, we wanted to thank you very, very much for doing this. Te queríamos agradecer mucho por hacer esto. We know that your character is so important. We love it so much. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. We know that you have the hat and you have the jacket, but something is missing for a full fedora. And so in our behalf and from Gustavo Caco Somoza, the prop maker, we would like to give you a gift. Pelu, no sé si quieres mostrarle el tuyo. Le vamos a regalar la Cruz de Coronado. We are going to give you the Cross of Coronado because you need to have it in your collection with your props. So you're the bearer of this cross, so you need to have it. We'll send it over. We'll communicate later, and we're going to send it to you. That's a gift.
Muchas gracias.
And one of the guys that works in with us a lot, and he's actually the one that made our logo, made a drawing for you too. There you go. And we're going to send that over to you as well.
That's very kind of you. I appreciate that.
Richard, I believe that this is the right way to say goodbye to you. There you go, right? Uy, no, se va a poner el Fedora.
Saca fotos, saca screen ahí.
Captura, captura.
Ah,
¡Oh! Mirá lo que es eso, qué locura.
This is perfect. Beautiful.
¿Sacaron screen?
sí, sacamos. Todos ahí.
Richard, thank you very much. Ahí está, ¿no?
Thank you,
Thank you so
Richard.
much. God bless you, and we can't wait to see more Fedora. Thank you very much.